I love this. Welcome back to my channel. You're here on a Tuesday, so this is where we do deep dives into the environmental, social and ethical issues with the world. And I've been kind of going on a bit of a Disney tangent, we could say. You requested this from my Instagram stories, so if you're not following me, do follow me already right here. It's just Bryony_vegan because for some reason someone else already has my name and that kind of freaks me out. So please also don't forget to subscribe because once I hit 1k I'm actually going to do my much anticipated Marilyn Monroe video. And I have a lot in my little thimble brain about Marilyn, and it would be really great if I could just put it all into a video, so please subscribe. So like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that other good stuff. Without any further ado, let's jump straight on into it. All of the products that I've used on my face are in the description box down below, along with all of my sources for this video too. Well, would you look at that? A study has come out just in time for this video topic. Like, it's almost like this was perfectly timed. So we're actually going to get into the study in just a moment. You have to be patient with me because I'd already been thinking about this with my little thimble brain just like running on overtime, because this has been a topic that's been of keen interest to me for quite some time now. So let's have a bit of discussion. Let's go back down memory lane. If you've been here before, then you'll already know that me as a child, I spent most of my time alone. Always alone. My childhood was kind of screwed up and I spent most of my time pretty scared. Not to the fault of my parent that I lived with, but to the fault of the other. It wasn't a very good situation, basically. And so for me, personally, Disney kind of like held this spot of like complete and utter safety. So I was the early riser in the house, and so I would get up stupidly early every single day and try my best to watch like whatever Disney movie I could on cassette tape, so much so that the ribbon wore out. I know most of the lines to all of the Disney princess movies except for Brave. I think I've only watched Brave like maybe 3 times. I don't really connect with it all that well, sorry. And honestly, it's like the hope that watching these movies gave me was like just the sort of light that I needed. I learnt that terrible things could be overcome. I learnt that bad situations could be escaped from. I learnt that if you did the right things, that you could actually be saved. And I learnt also that hard work could be part of actually saving you as well. So all of this stuff was really important as a child for me to learn anyway. And for me personally, none of these movies actually had an adverse effect on me in terms of like body image or anything like that. The things that did have an effect on me in terms of body image and appearances was the TV that was around in the 90s, because like there were adverts for Tic Tacs where like there's only 2 calories, and Diet Coke ads and all of this stuff that was all very much related to diet culture very heavily, and heroin chic was in. So there was a lot of other things that were contributing to my poor body image, but none of that ever actually stemmed from the Disney princesses because they were drawn. At least for my little child brain, I knew that they were like animated, you know. Also, like we've talked about like the halo effect and all of that other stuff, like literally I've got a whole video on all of this. I've got 2 videos on all of it actually, to say that the good characters are the beautiful ones is like, well yeah, but that's like media in general. Granted, I've already talked about my other issues with Disney, which is again linked up here, where we talk about like why they designed the villains the way that they do, which is problematic. So yeah, ultimately like fantasy stories of good triumphing over evil, that didn't negatively impact my little tiny brain. And I always had a fixation on like being able to turn into a teenager as well, and then having a lot of freedom, and it's like that's the one thing that like those movies taught me, was that when you're 16 years old then you're not a child anymore, and it's like, oh sweetie, you still very much are. So if there's one unrealistic expectation, it's that they were like able to have like their own autonomy at 16, which you definitely don't. Nothing negative came from those Disney movies, like especially not for me. Like they were kind and they were good and they were honest and they were truthful, and like they all had opinions as well. So I didn't take away like anything bad from watching these movies. Like if we want to talk about like role model behavior, then let's, shall we? Let's go princess by princess. Even the classics have very redeeming qualities. Starting off with our first one, Snow White. She told a group of grown-ass men that she broke into the house of the fact that they were not being like actual adults. Cinderella, one of the best ones. She worked her butt off, like always was kind to everyone around her, and even tried to show kindness to like her bullies. She kept fighting for justice in the only ways that you can when you're literally a prisoner. Sleeping Beauty actually made up her own mind about wanting to be with the prince, but then actually understood the duty that comes with like being royalty and with having the crown. Ariel learned everything that she could about another way of life and risked everything for an actual chance at it as well. In case you forgot, it was actually the human world that she was fascinated with before she even saw Eric, but then she was like, oh, he's fine. And so just kind of coincided, but like she was really interested with the human world to begin with. So anyone that says that she gave up her voice for a man is like, was he just her ticket out of it? I'm not saying that she didn't love him, it was just convenient. Belle was an outcast who sacrificed her own life to save her father, and then also took the path of understanding rather than abject fear towards the beast as well. And this is with a beast who could literally kill her with just like one easy swipe of his paw. So I'm like, I know that there's all of the bestiality stuff in there, but I don't really think that we should be bringing that into children's topics, even though I've joked about it before. Oh, and also Belle had to put up with like sexual harassment like in front of our eyes as well. I think that she's like one of the only princesses that had to do that. So Jasmine stood up literally against the most powerful men around her at the time. Like, granted, I know you're like, oh, but it was just her dad. It's like, he's literally Sultan and the Grand Vizier. So I'm like, she managed to stand up to both of them and also try her best to change the law. And actually, didn't she do it in the end in the animated version? I'm pretty sure she did. Maybe not for everyone, maybe only benefited herself, but you know, we can hope that she carried on that change. Pocahontas, the movie version, I know that gets a lot of hate. I still really like that movie. It was one of my favorites as a kid. Like, she got the white men to stop killing the Native Americans and actually like created like friendship between them somehow. And yeah, it may not have worked out all that well in the end because, you know, reality. But you know, in the movies, she was like probably the most intelligent out of all of the princesses, and she also taught like people like John Smith that the land should be respected. Well, I mean, like, she tried. We're still trying to this day. But Mulan tried to protect her father and saved freaking China. Like, I don't think she needs any more defense, except for the fact that Disney kind of butchered the story, but that's a different thing. Tiana worked her socks off at 2 different jobs to try and make her dreams come true. Now, granted, I do agree with you. I think that her best friend Charlotte should have actually helped her out monetary wise, but I also understand, as a fellow very independent woman, the fact that she wouldn't want to actually receive help and she'd want to do it on her own. And it's like, I do get that. I fully get that. Rapunzel escaped the clutches of her deranged mother, went to venture the outside world, broke out of a way of complete indoctrination, befriended a whole bunch of people because she managed to keep an open mind despite all of the BS that her mother was telling her all of her life, and faced heaps of her fears. You know, like, bravery like 100 for her. Honestly, if Rapunzel was around when I was a child, it would easily be my favorite Disney movie. And also, another thing that's going for Rapunzel is that she actually learned to trust a whole number of people, and that is a skill that so many of us still lack to this day. Merida literally stood up against the king and queen of her whole kingdom and fought for her own hand in marriage, like, staunchly independent. And then she also went up against the entire kingdom once again to save her mother's life, even though like the king was directly against her along with the whole kingdom. Anna has constant hope and fight, and of course a huge heart, which actually helped save her sister's life. Elsa was born different and learned to no longer be afraid of her own uniqueness and embrace it instead. If you could change the weather and like ride a water horse, I'm pretty sure that we'd all be able to like be okay with it, but so much trauma happens to these characters. My gosh, how do they even get through? Moana went on her own adventure, which then turned into a quest where she had to learn numerous new skills, and then she actually used her typical feminine skills of having a high EQ to figure out, oh, actually the heart of Te Fiti needs to get returned to Te Fiti as opposed to like destroyed. And she also taught Maui a bunch of lessons as well. Moana is such an amazing movie. So now that we've talked about my opinions, let's talk about the studies, shall we? I say as if I'm holding up a book. No. Because, you know, we actually have some science behind this now. Well, I love it. It's amazing. So we've got Sarah Coyne, who is a professor in Brigham Young University's School of Family Life. She actually conducted a study with over 300 children with a 50-50 split of children that identified as boys or girls. And this was from the age of like 4 to 5, and this study was conducted in 2012, 2013, where, you know, the height of actually hating on Disney was like rampant in the internet community, like, because like hating on anything feminine was just really cool then, and it still is to some people. Like people just like what they like. Shut the hell up. I want to put my bad faith criticism to good use. Sure, CinemaSins, you can go away. The first iteration of this was done many years ago, and so she's actually followed up with the kids, and luckily all of them were willing to actually participate again. And with the initial study, it was actually on a very short-term view, and like I said, this is with 4 and 5-year-olds, so they came away from movies with like a very basic view of like very gender normative like sort of roles, and so everyone had like this whole big freak out, and all of the people back then were like, ah, see what I mean? It's all gender normative, like that's what Disney does, and it's like, let's have a long-term view maybe. And that's what she did, and she was shocked by the findings of her own study as well, which I personally think is really good, because, you know, we can all be wrong, I can be wrong, you can be wrong, we're all human. Humans are fallible creatures, it's okay, it's perfectly fine to keep learning. So these same children that she followed up with were from the ages of 10 to 11 now, and it was actually found that girls who were obsessed with princess culture at 5 were actually more likely to hold progressive views about gender roles and to advocate for both female empowerment and for men to express their emotions at age 10. Well, look how the cookie crumbles. The first study was really done before Frozen, and we all know that Frozen changed everything when it came to like Disney, because it was like, haha, I'm pointing at myself and saying, oh, you can't fall in love with a man that you just met. The fact that sisterly love could actually save a life, because there's not only one kind of love, and like all these other things that have like led Disney down a different trajectory path, which I think is a positive one. But I'm also not hating on the traditional princesses who I just defended, obviously. Again, I told you that we're talking about body image, so body image wasn't actually an issue either, despite what you may think. So we all know how I've talked about how Disney figures are kind of like sexified like child proportions. I've talked about this myself as well in this video up here, and that's where I kind of have a few problems with it, but it hasn't actually negatively impacted children that are watching it. Honestly, things like Barbie and Bratz have had like a more negative impact, because they're more of like just a body, even though like I know that the Barbie movies have gone down like amazingly, and I know that Gen Z, if any of you are watching this, then you will defend them to your grave. I fully understand that. I even watched a few of them as well. I was more of a Barbie girl than a Bratz girl, because the Bratz girls were actually very intimidating and remind me of the people that bullied me at school because they could afford the cool clothes and like did all the cool things. I was definitely not one of them. So whilst the princesses do obviously get like gorgeous clothes at points of the movies, like most of them are actually rags to riches stories as well. So it's not necessarily focused on the clothes, it's more the merchandise that's focused on them, as opposed to like the movies in themselves. And as a child that couldn't really afford very much, it was more like the movies that got me through, because it's like you can rewatch a cassette tape like until it completely wears out, as little me definitely knows. So it's like when clothes do get centered on, for Cinderella it was actually feeling like royalty. It was that sensation of not just wearing rags. And for someone like Ariel, for example, she actually got to wear the clothes that the humans that she really wanted to emulate wear. Dreams coming true. It was more of like the focus on doing all of the human stuff as opposed to like just the dress. This brings me to the other point of the study, is that lower socioeconomic children actually found these stories as a point of hope as opposed to a point of despair, as they're seeing like these like beautiful people get to like go around in like a castle or whatever. They felt inspired in the same way that I felt inspired as a child. Well, let's actually talk about boys, not the way that Brittany talks about them. The children that identify as boys, they actually had great impacts from watching these movies, where traits of toxic masculinity were not found in these children, like, which is amazing, because this is actually something that many adults are still struggling with and promoting. They were more open about expressing their emotions, which is really important, because like I think that we've all seen the damage that happens when boys can't talk about their emotions, haven't we? Not only that, but like the children that identify as girls, they have more progressive views and want greater equality as well. So honestly, like this study, now look, granted it is one study and you know that I'm a fan of consensus in general, I'm still excited because this is still a growing area of research. So if there are things to update, I'll happily do another video on it. But this study actually gives me a lot of hope around these sorts of stories as well, because it's like these kids are watching these fantasy stories and they're not taking negative things from it, they're actually feeling inspired by it no matter where they are in life, if that makes sense. No matter where you are on the richness scale, where you are in the world, you've kind of got like some more representation happening now. It still needs a lot more work in many ways. The thing that Sarah Coyne actually really wants more focus on is like a diversity of bodies as well in this, because we can all see like the type of body that is followed by all of the princesses except for Moana, because Moana is actually muscular, but they don't show like defined muscles, but she is muscular. And hopefully we'll actually get this from Disney. I'm gonna put my lashes on and let's keep talking. And yes, I'm going for a very bright pink lip. A little bit of gloss. This gloss is so gloop. Getting back to that whole diversity issue, a majority of the princesses are white and pretty and cishet, and we need to like recognize the fact that there is still work in this area that needs to be done. Now look, I know that Elsa is coded as a lesbian because she wears trousers and that's a signifier in like traditional Hollywood. If you didn't know that, actually follow like Be Kind Rewind. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not actually watching that channel. And I know that like most of these stories are based on like folklore, which is mostly white. So like I totally get that they need to like revamp things and like do some like different retellings of stuff, and maybe even like having a modern day princess, but maybe then they'll need to come across that vegan argument I was making. But it's like, I still just want to reiterate that these are fantasy stories for children. Like, these are a form of escapism. If we're looking for role models out of like complete fantasy stories and like this is the only role model that we expect the children to have, then we've got a bit of a problem as a society, right? Like, I do understand that like content that's made for children, it should be educating them on stuff and it should be empowering them and it should be like something that will hopefully teach them something, but not everything has to be so deep. If that makes sense. If we want good role models for our kids, should we not have that in our homes and also the people that are surrounding the children, because you become like the 5 people that you spend most of your time with? Asking a corporation to like instill really great values in your children, whilst they'll do some of them like which adhere to like sort of more right-wing values, they won't be making you question like the fact that all of the princesses are in fact princesses, and the question of royalty, the question of like wealth distribution. They won't be asking those sorts of questions. So it depends on the kind of like role models that you want your kids to like have, right? We also need to recognize the fact that kids are spending their time on TikTok, kids are spending their time on Instagram, kids are on Facebook, kids are everywhere and being put in everyone's videos, despite the fact that they can't consent, but that's another issue I've already talked about. I know there's been like this tendency away from animation and towards realism as well, so it kind of has me feeling like, okay, cool, we actually need to have like good role models for kids that are actually like, I don't know, people. And the same thing is like us talking about all of these bad people and all the things that they're doing, but still like they're so rich and they've got all of this like popularity and stuff. It's like, well, to a kid, you want to have money and popularity because that's how you survive in school. So maybe talking less about these bad people and talking more about the good people that maybe aren't all of that stuff. I think that would be really net positive for everyone, including the children. I honestly do understand, like, it's just a bunch of pretty people that are like off in their fancy lives doing like their fantasy things where it's very clear cut about good and evil and all of that other stuff. Escapism and being shown femininity in all the forms it comes in and all the positives around that, I think is like a net positive for kids to be exposed to. I don't necessarily think that there's anything all that wrong with kids watching this stuff, and it's like, sure, if they relate to it, then as we can see from like these 300 kids, it's been a positive thing. Sometimes if you're going through it, you just need to have some sort of escapism, and I fully think that that is absolutely okay for kids to be exposed to. I don't think, as we can see, I don't really think that escapism has been all that negative. You all weren't complaining when you were watching Game of Thrones. Everyone needs to escape some time into some fantasy world. And they've got positive things from it. So maybe as a collective we can stop hating on things that are typically feminine and like saying that they're devalued or that they're wrong and putting bad faith criticism into it. Maybe that would be a positive as well, you know, not just like watching something to poke holes in it. It's like, Do you want to view everything so negatively? Like, there are some good things out there as well. I say this as someone who creates a lot of negative content, I fully understand that. But like, I'm trying to do something positive here, okay? Anyway, lovelies, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave the sparkling star emoji. That would be amazing. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on Tuesday with a new video. I think it's going to be on Judy Garland next time, which will be really, really good. I get to watch some of my favourite movies from the past to research this stuff. Take care of yourself. Bye. Oh my god. What is it? Alaska. Hi. Okay, really. Goodbye. Things never change, like holding on tight to you. Really hoping that today's the day this mascara doesn't flake on me. That would be great. Is it almost a match? Feels like it's a match. Oh, good. I thought the lashes had lifted. I got so worried for a second there. Okay, we're fine.